Hey, welcome to our third episode. This is me, Andrew, again. This is Eros, and we're here to talk to you today about channels and customer relationships and how the business model Canvas handles that, and how the Lean Startup method handles it. So let's get right to it. So essentially, channels is just thinking about how you can connect and interact with your customers in the most effective and efficient manner. And so today we'll be kind of going about more into detail about all the channels through which you can make contact to your customer segments. So first of all, how do you raise customer awareness? Um, how do you get customers familiar with your product or service? This is primarily done through marketing, and there's a lot of types of marketing. You got print media through, which is essentially newspapers. You can mail people coupons, but this is kind of an old school as of now, and we got some more preferred techniques that are more common today. We have digital media, so that's the most common one of these is probably going to be TV, television commercials. We see them all the time. Super Bowl commercials, probably the most expensive form of digital media. Pretty much any type of video, YouTube videos, it's all the same. And then we got social media. This is probably one of the newest ones that's really been growing in the past decade, really. Essentially interacting with your customer segments through social media, just interacting with the community, using trending hashtags, talking about events, just being the funny face behind their favorite company. And then lastly, we got publicity stunts, pretty much anything that can raise awareness on, through various news outlets. So let's say your company, um, it does something amazing, and it makes the headline news. So that would be something that really raises publicity and gets a lot of people to hear about it. So now let's get into how customers can evaluate how you offer or what you offer. So this is done through reviews primarily. Um, there's a lot of different sources of these reviews nowadays. We got Yelp, which is pretty much the go-to place for reviews. Some other common ones are Consumer Reports magazine that kind of goes in depth about that. And we got Amazon reviews, and that's probably one of the most prevalent sources of reviews, especially for online shopping, because when you're buying something online, you don't get to have the product in front of you, and so that's when reviews come really important to the consumer. So it's always good to have a review service, especially if you're selling things online. Now, let's get into how customers purchase from you. So these are kind of obvious. You got online, so they can shop online through Amazon or online marketplace, where they essentially do all the checking out themselves. It's all pretty automated and has very low overhead. Then we got in person, which is pretty traditional, and it's still effective. For some things and services, you have to have an in-person place for maybe like a gym. It just doesn't work online. You can't have an online gym really. And then we got over the phone. So some of these would be like infomercials you may have seen. So OxyClean, that's a popular one. ShamWow, all that stuff. And so that's how customers purchase from you. Now let's go into how your company delivers the value proposition, kind of tying back to the previous video. So essentially, this is branding, like what makes your product or service better, even though other companies' products and services may be similar or even cheaper. It's essentially what makes your product, and why consumers would want to, be a part of that. And so that's that. Let's go into how you provide customer service and support to your customers. So we got a lot of different types. We got direct personal assistance. So this can be online or in person, where there's an actual representative talking to the customer or live chatting with them or texting them. And so this is very personal, but also it's kind of expensive because you have to have an employee ready at all times. So, if this is an online support, you have to have employees to do that. Whereas if you're in store, it's kind of it's kind of easier because you have employees there anyways. So next we got self-service. So this is kind of a fact section on a web page, frequently asked questions. So just kind of accumulating all the questions customers ask all the time, and kind of just answering the questions before they even ask them. So that's very effective. Also, it goes with self-service is Walmart self-checkout machines. That's kind of a self-service, obviously, and online checkout, as we talked about earlier with Amazon. The customer does all the checking out themselves. So next we got automated services. So this would kind of include an automated phone system. And so you kind of go into depth about your issue. They kind of separate into categories. If you're having a technical issue, maybe press 1 on the phone, or if you're having a software issue or something, press 2. So it kind of breaks it down, and some of them are completely automated, whereas it tells you exactly what to do, whereas others, they kind of connect you to a representative in that department. And then we got, last but not least, user communities. These are really cool because they're self-sufficient. It's essentially all the users they post on this message board or something, and they can just answer each other's questions, really get into depth about the service, and it's really cool because it's self-sufficient. There's no employees running it; it's completely consumer run. So that's a really good thing to have. It's very effective and cost effective. Now, let's get into how to maintain these relationships. So social interactions is a big one, like social media I talked about earlier, and also being consistent with things, and not, you got to be consistent with your brand. If you have to constantly represent those core values that you have right off the bat, and having help available 24/7 is also a good thing to maintain relationships, because then the customer never feels like they're lost, and they always have a place to go to when they need something sorted out. And then what kind of relationships do your customers expect? So it can vary with every company, but usually excellent customer service is expected, but for every company it could vary of what your customers expect, and that's something you should look into for each individual company, and get some feedback from your customers. And then how can you utilize these relationships? So what you can do is with these are 3 things. You can acquire more customers. So if a customer is really satisfied with how you're connecting with their channels, it's pretty much free word of mouth advertising. They can tell their friends about how awesome of an experience they had, and it's basically going to get you more customers just from doing a good job. And then you got retaining your current customers. Pretty much happy customers become repeat customers. And then here comes the 80/20 rule. 80% of your sales come from 20% of your customers. So this is really effective way of getting those repeat sales. Just doing what you do it right, and you got to keep those customers you already have, because that's where you get most of your sales from. And then last but not least, you can upsell customers. So you can get them to purchase more expensive items or services, upgrade things, you name it. So if they just become so satisfied with the product or service, they might feel that they can upgrade. They have more confidence in your company, and they're just more willing to spend more money into it and get a better product. So that's basically how the lean, the business model canvas handles channels and customer relations. So Eros, would you like to go into more in depth about how the lean startup method addresses this?
Sure. So what I was finding out is actually this lean startup is actually very similar to the way that the business model canvas actually follows. They're very similar. So instead of making really detailed differences, instead I'm going to actually build on that for what the lean startup would do. So let's keep in mind, let's say that you have you're the manufacturer, the owner of your company, right? And on the other end, you have your customer. In between you two, there's a whole lot of people that it's going to exchange hands with your product until it ends up in the end user's hands, right? So there's a lot of outlets that you can use. You can use the original equipment manufacturers, so the people who actually make it, like your factories, they can sell them out. You can have people who actually have certain categories, right, that actually sell. So let's say there's a company like a wholesaler that does specifically printing machines. Well, they could actually directly sell straight to the customer. your product, or you could do it through value-added resellers. So there are some companies that will buy your product, then they'll add to it with products of their own, and then resell it. You can do it to people like that. You can sell web online, like he said. You can do it to straight dealers, like retailers, like he said as well, distributors. So, all right. So one thing you want to do, especially as a lean startup, is keep in mind that when you're selling to channels, especially when you're first starting out, a lot of them are going to be very skeptical and they're not going to want to take your product in. Why? Because they want to be able to convert your product into cash right away. So a startup, you can't come in saying, oh yeah, we'll sell on your shelves. Really, you need to be selling already. You have to have a customer base already. But keep in mind, just let's say that you do get into a store. A lot of startups think that they're done once they've gotten their products on the shelves. But they're only going to keep you there as long as you're making sales, because it's not the retailer who's going to create customers for you and them. You are the one who has to create customers so that they go to their stores and buy them. Because especially with distributors or anybody who's part of the channel only wants to be part of your team and be a partner of yours if they know that they're going to get some profit out of that. So it's always important to keep that in mind. Something you have to keep in mind though is like, how does this actually work in the real world? So here's an example. Like, let's say you're a book publishing company, right? And let's say that we are the customers looking for a book, and we go to, let's say, what's that one store?
Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble, yeah, Barnes and Noble. And you pay $20 for a book. Well, those $20 are going to pay off for everybody that came into contact with that book before you bought it. So, for example, let's say it's $20, right? Let's say that the publisher would get 35% of that deal, which means they would end up with $7 in their pockets because of that book. A national wholesaler, right, which would be the next step after the publishing company, let's say they get 15% or $3, right? Then the next step would be your distributor. They would get 10% or $2. And lastly, the person before the customer would be the retailer, which would give about 40%. That's $8. So one more time, the publisher 7, national wholesaler 3, distributor 2, retailer 8, and that will make all $20. And of course, the customer doesn't get anything because they're the ones who paid for the product. So they really get the book, right? So one more thing that you really need to be keeping in mind, especially when you're going to be selling, you actually have to also keep in mind, if you're starting out, right, you have to be extremely loyal to your first customers, because you only have a few, and those few are so important because they're going to give you feedback on how to mold and refine your product, right? So every once in a while, hopefully not too many times, but also, usual, checking in with your customers. I heard there was a good ratio, especially with Eric Rice's book, The Lean Startup Method. It said that about 3 weeks to less than 2 months, you should check in with your customers. So you don't want to change your product every single week, right? Because then you wouldn't be able to establish your product, and not everybody would be able to really make up their minds. But if you were to check in maybe every 3 weeks to 2 months, you'd actually be able to get a customer that has really gotten to know the product, has really gotten to test the quality of it, has been able to have feedback ready for you that you guys can discuss, and that you are able to then analyze, turn around, and present a new product that they could try and see if they like it better or not. So really, it's really important, especially with the channels, you got to keep in mind who's all involved, right? Because we were talking about the book publishing company, yet because of sectors, you could end up needing less, like a smaller channel where you could just do direct sales, or you might need a larger amount, for like a publishing company. So that's on the lean startup side.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for watching. Tune in next time for we'll be talking about key activities and key resources for businesses, and so we'll kind of talk about how each method handles that. So thanks for watching, and have a good one.